All right. Okay. Good morning, friends. Today is December 21st, 2025. It is the solstice. We have talk on the winter solstice. But before we get to that, we're going to start with a reading from The Voice of Silence. Make hard thy soul against the snares of self. Deserve it for the name of diamond soul. For as the diamond buried deep within the throbbing heart of the earth can never mirror back the earthly lights, so are the mind and soul. Plunged in dhyana manger, these must mirror not of Maya's realm elusive. When thou hast reached that state, the portals that thou hast to conquer, on the path fling open wide their gates to let thee pass, and nature's strongest mights possess no power to stay thy course. Thou wilt be master of the sevenfold path, but not till then, O candidate for trial's passing speech. Till then, a task far harder still awaits thee. Thou hast to feel thyself all thought, and yet exile all thoughts from out thy soul. Thou hast to reach that fixity of mind in which no breeze, however strong, can waft an earthly thought within. Thus purified, the shrine must of all action, sound, or earthly light be void. And as the butterfly, overtaken by the frost, falls lifeless at the threshold, so must all earthly thoughts fall dead before the fame. And now for today's talk.
Good morning, friends, and welcome to the talk about symbols of Christmas. So we'll touch and try to decode some of the very basic symbols of Christmas that we're so used to, and sometimes we take for granted, and we'll try to look at them from the Theosophical perspective, from Esoteric perspective, and see what secrets they hold and what deeper meanings that they have. First, it's hard not to recognize that today is December 21st, as was already mentioned. It is the winter solstice. And in the reading from the voice, where we're being called to extinguish all earthly thoughts and be all thoughts and no thought at all, that best accomplished on this very day of the winter solstice in the day that holds the balance between the darkness and the light. And what is interesting that the word solstice is originated from sol sistere. It is Latin sol. Oops, the wrong marker.
It's right there.
So it is sol and sistere, and we've made a solstice out of this. So sol is easy to recognize. It is the sun, and sistere means to stand still or to be in a perfect balance. So to be at the sort of the point where you are in neither place. You're sort of pivoting on a point of balance. So this is the day where the sun is pivoting in a perfect balance, and where we are pivoting in that perfect balance between the spiritual and material. This is that point from where we can take the impetus and project ourselves forward as the glowing light. There are spiritual turnings within the seasons, and to understand the symbolism of solstices, be it winter solstice or the summer solstice, it is important to come back to the concept of cycles. In the past, we've been living in the cycles. The humanity was embedded in the cycles. It was not an esoteric concept, it was just the way we live, because we're still close to agricultural cycles. To exist and survive as an agricultural cycle, you had to be very attuned to the seasonal cycles and to the cosmic cycles. That there are reasons why many ancient civilizations from Incas, Mayas, Egyptians were so obsessed with observation of the sky and stars, because that was the map for reading the cycles. So cycles were very important to us as humans, we were embedded living in them, were naturally part of the cycles. And it is with the beginning of industrialization and invention of electricity where we start going out of the cycles and being detached and creating our own, so to say, alternative reality within which we exist and experience, and sort of forget that we are still driven by cycles, that our psyche, our nature, to our core DNA is driven by the cycles. So the celebration of solstices calls us back to our roots and reminds of the importance of those cycles in our life. And the cycles can be very short cycles. It's day and night. We fall asleep. We are not present. We're awake during the day. The nature falls asleep during the winter. So it's a seasonal cycle. Then it comes back and becomes awake in the spring. Then there are the annual cycles. And then there are universal cycles, so to say the Manvantaras or the Manvantaras and Pralayas, where the entire universe goes into the state of sleeping and the state of being awake. So to say the breathing of the universe. So cycles represent the periods of involution and evolution, of not being and being, of expanding and collapsing. It's basically the waves of the universal existence itself. And our human existence, as above, so below, definitely follows those cycles. So when we look at probably two most celebrated solstices in humanity, in human culture, in religion, that will be the winter solstice and the summer solstice. During the summer solstice, there still exist lots of Nordic traditions. The Nordic countries, Baltic countries, celebrate the summer solstice that calls us to come to the maximum outward potential, maximum outward light. This is where we reach sort of the peak of what we plan to achieve outwardly. And the winter solstice is sort of the opposite pole of that. This is the point of maximum inward potential. This is where we're not creating outwardly. This is where we go in within ourselves and creating inwardly. And what is interesting that when we look in many esoteric teachings, as well as we look into the Secret Doctrine in Volume 1, HPB is saying that light is matter and darkness is pure spirit. This is a little bit opposite to what exoteric religions teach, because the light is the spirit and the matter is dark, and it's sort of being vilified as evil or heavy. Where HPB actually tells us the opposite. It is the light that is matter, but darkness is pure spirit. And everybody's probably familiar with the saying that the brightest hour comes after the darkest. The brightest moment comes after the darkest hour. So the dawn comes after the darkest hour in the night, and often our spiritual awakening comes after the darkest hour of the soul. So the reason HPB is pointing us to the importance of understanding darkness and seeing darkness as a spirit, and seeing it more objectively and not vilifying the darkness, is because she says that the darkness is not evil, despite all of the vilification in many different religious traditions. And it is not absence. That because our human eyes are used to not being able to see in darkness, we perceive that darkness is absence of meaning, absence of matter, absence of objects, and since we cannot see, it is scary. Many animals see perfectly in the dark. They see better in the dark than nocturnal. So to them, darkness is a source of all vision, of all meaning, of all possibilities. So the way HPB describes darkness is that it is actually a lack of duality, because in the darkness you cannot differentiate, and it is a source of all possibilities. That everything can come from the darkness. It's like this dark velvet void in which everything is possible. And she basically says that the winter solstice is where the light is weakest and the inner spiritual potential is greatest. So in that greatest darkness, we can find our inner light. So when we're not attracted to all the shining outside, we can see our inner light. And this is why the winter solstice is considered to be such a holy day and the holy period, because in that it ends the darkest period of the year and leads us to begin growing with the new light. Now something else happens. There's another symbol attached to the, and I just called it for us a Christmas period, because this is what as a civilization we celebrate. But there is many other celebrations within that celebration. So another interesting moment, what we actually celebrate in the winter solstice and later in Christmas, because Christmas is in a way just a remake of the winter solstice tradition. We celebrate the sun. Sun was a deity in many ancient teachings. It is basically the symbol of God descending on earth. The sun is starting to grow. The sun is descending on the earth. And again, it is a symbol. The sun is not descending on earth, it's just starting to grow. Days are getting longer. And the same with Christianity. When we learn about the birth of Christ, the God is actually not being born on earth. It's not descending on earth. But we're celebrating the inner God within each one of us. It's the descent of the divine into matter and ascent of the divine within us. So the birth of Christ is actually the celebration of that potential in each one of us to be born as God. And what is interesting, if we look into the Christianity itself and examine the Christian writings on this, this is what Jesus says himself in the teachings that often not being noted and not being understood in its proper context. One saying, this is from John 14:12, is we can do greater things than he did. So John says that we people can do greater things than Christ did. And in John 10, there is a reference to us as God. So I actually read it verbatim. Very truly, I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these. Now, this is where the misinterpretation of this descent of God was, who believes in me. So the emphasis in Christianity was on the belief. If you believe in Jesus, you will do greater things than him. But what is a belief? Like you can believe in external versus if you believe that you hold the Christ principle. If you believe that you hold the Christ principle and you are aligned with the same standard of being Christ-like, you can do things that are greater than he did. So the belief is where we have projected our belief in external being, the descent of the God on earth who was born on Christmas, instead of realizing that if we embody the Christ principle, we can do greater things than Jesus did. So this is actually in esoteric, meaning we're celebrating in the symbolism of birth of Christ, not the birth of the deity on earth, but the moment when we can realize the birth of divine in each one of us. And the second saying is when Jesus answers that it is not written in your law, I have said, you are gods. Like there can be nothing more clear. That Jesus said it's not written in your law. It's not written in the Judaism. But I tell you, you are gods. Like, well, what are you sitting and waiting for? So when we look at the symbolism of Christmas and why we're so attached to the birth of God, because again, we're trying to externalize and think that the descent of the divine will save us or be there for us instead of embracing it as our own birth. And that takes us to the concept of the second birth, the inner birth. So the second birth or the inner birth. And actually some of the new Christian traditions also embody it. There is a concept of being born again. but that comes with the being born again in some of the, I think it's some Baptist traditions and others. It's actually been taken from esoteric traditions, because in esoteric traditions, the second birth was the inner birth or the initiation. So this is where you are born to your divine potential. So this is a fundamental idea in esoteric philosophy that basically corresponds to the individual recognizing its higher self, Atma Buddha Manas, and rising to its own divinity. So this is what this season actually calling us, not to venerate the stand of external gods like there would be aliens, but to realizing that all of that potential, that we can do even more, and it's written in the scripture, that it is us. And it is for us to decide whether we want to be, whether we want to read the symbols literally, or we want to understand the deeper symbol, the deeper meaning behind the symbols. And what is interesting that the birth of Christ is not unique on December 25th, and there are many other gods born about the same time. So we have birth of many other masters. We have birth of Mitra, Bacchus, Adonis, Osiris, Apollo, Buddha. They're all born around this, basically between the winter solstice and the new year. So when you look at this, it looks like a very clear bunching of the gods. So it's definitely symbolic. So when you realize that all gods cannot be born on the same day, and also less likely that each tradition borrowed from the other, some of them were actually not as aware of each other. So most likely it is coming from the sort of proto-source of esotericism, that holds this deeper meaning of the birth of the divine in us. And this is what the real celebration is. Now, the next interesting concept is to look at this time from the energetic standpoint. And energetically, the sun starting to, basically, they started to increase, the sun gaining power. So this is creating the power of the astral light on Earth. And the reason also this potentiality within us was put at this time, because we can go with the energetic movement of the cycle of the Earth and be within it, basically not to do things that are counterproductive, or we can not. And this is again that in 21st century, we have to work hard to realign ourselves back with the cycles. That the ancients knew very well that this is the time of self-reflection, of reconnection, and sort of more of an inner search and meditative state. Because all the earthly works were done, all the agricultural cycles were over, so we existed within that reality, so people were naturally aligned. Now our work cycles and our existence is not connected to natural cycles. So we have to remind ourselves that this is the time of this reflection and inner search and inner understanding and growth. And also from understanding the symbols, why it is now, because again of the growth of the astral light. So we looked at the symbol of cycles of sun, and the meaning behind the solstices and alignment with the cycles. So the next very interesting symbol in both solstices and Christmas is the Christmas tree. And this is we would like to research more and understand more. How did we acquire this interesting tradition of cutting the tree, bringing in the home, making all of the mess we make, and continue doing this for centuries? What symbology that Christmas tree holds to us, and why we're so attached to this, and where it originated, and what meaning it holds. So the evergreen, the Christmas tree was specific to the Christmas and Christianization of this symbol. But the evergreen was present in many other religions and many other traditions. Evergreen basically symbolized the immortality, rebirth, reincarnation, and our internal soul. Because as an evergreen, it would remain green throughout all the times when other trees would die. And when you would look at the nature, when the deciduous trees would appear quite dead, we know that in spring they'll come back. But somebody who have never seen the spring yet will say they're completely dead. But the evergreen will remind that there is eternal life in all of them, and this is just a matter of cycle. So in a way, the nature of trees were always very holy to humanity. The trees represent the cycles and the never-ending nature of life that simply transitions through the cycle and through the seasons, be it seasons on Earth or manvantaras of the universe. So when we may see the trees are bare and dead, they actually alive deep in their roots, in their potentiality, and they will be back when it's their time. And so and so is the universe after the states of pralaya, when it goes into the, in our understanding, total collapse to the basically one pointedness from where it can come and expand and come to life again. So now let's look more at the evergreens and the meaning of the tree. The tree was a symbol or so-called axis mundi, the world tree. So the axis mundi, the tree that basically holds the world together or basically connects heaven, earth, and the underworld. Because the tree has roots that connects underworld, it has the trunk that is present in our material world, and it has branches that stretch high and far into the sky, so connecting us to the divine. The tree was a universal symbol, and its motifs appear in many different traditions. The few traditions that I wanted to share, one is Yggdrasil in Norse mythology. The tree, and especially evergreen, was very present in the Norse mythology from Norway, Sweden, Finland, also Baltics, where the tree was worshipped as a symbol of human life, human cycles, and again connects into heaven, earth, and the underworld. The other tree that we see appearing is the tree of life in Kabbalah. Again, the tree represents life and our cycles and our connection to all the different realms of the world. And the third tree that is very important is the Ashwata tree. Ashwata tree is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, and just the same as Yggdrasil and the tree of life in Kabbalah, it has the roots that connect us to the underworld and the branches that connect us to the, so to say, heaven. And the evergreen tree also represents immortality and eternal soul. The presence of the evergreen tree was noted in many esoteric traditions. It was used in the celebration of the Mitra. It was mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, in Kabbalah, and it basically represents the divine monad, that part of us that is eternal and undying, that is persisting and going through the cycles of life and death. Not in the personality that we perceive, but in the eternal seed of each one of us, where we hold that divine potentiality in us. Now we'll look closer at different parts of the tree and see how the parts of the tree, look at the inner constitution of the tree. We know the outer physical constitution of the tree, but there is an inner symbolic constitution of the tree and what these parts of the tree represent. So there are roots. Every tree starts with the roots, and we say that basically if the roots are severed, the tree will die. So roots represent our physical and ethereal body. This is the Stula Sharira or prana. This is what connects us to physicality. The trunk represents the personal self. This is our identity. This is Kama Manas, our emotional, intellectual state. So this is I am in this world physically, and all what I represent, all beliefs, desires, wishes. So this is the trunk. Now the branches is the higher mind and the aspiration. This is in the tree what stretches out beyond just I am, what I am, and seeking to understand the edges of the universe and the the spiritual realms. And what is interesting that for Christmas, we always put something on top of the tree. So what calls us to put something, or there is an angel, or there is a star, but we always crown the tree with some ornament. So this is so to say the crown jewel of the tree. And there's a deep symbology behind that ornament on top of the tree. So it is a crown jewel. When we put and usually it is the star that is put on the tree. That's one of the common ornaments. So the star on top of the tree, the esoteric meaning of that symbol would be the tree is crowned by a fire triad. This is the Atma Buddhi Manas, our divine self. So in a way, the tree represents the ladder of evolution. So we have our physicality, we have our astral beings, and we are crowned with the triad of Atma Buddha Manas as the star on top of the tree. Then we got all of the ornaments that we put on the tree. That it's always decorated in the most fascinating and beautiful things. And some of these ornaments represent symbols of our life. They may be symbolic to each family that decorates the tree, and maybe of meeting to the other family. So it can be ornaments of our physical existence here, things we love, things we value, events that happened, memories. But the esoteric meaning of decorating the tree with ornaments, and especially with candles and lights, we are lighting or we're enabling different faculties. We're awakening different spiritual virtues and faculties in ourselves, because the tree at the end represents us. So we're lighting up this new faculties, new awakenings, so to say, new gifts that we acquire in each life through going through karmic experience. So that's the inner constitution of the Christmas tree. That's quite uniquely put, but there is definitely lots of symbology that different traditions put into this, why we have the tree decorated with ornaments and the star or angel on the top. So to summarize this, it represents our inner flame or our inner selves. It's awakening of all spiritual facilities. And it is also a ladder through which we ascend from our very physical nature of the roots to the very top of the spiritual triad, the eternal triad that crowns the tree. So in a way, it can be also seen as a ladder of initiation. It is the steps of our evolution and our spiritual growth. Now, the tree was also venerated by many different traditions, as I've mentioned, and I want to mention specifically the tree from where Christianity acquired the tree and basically absorbed it in its own symbology. It was from Norse and Germanic tribes. So evergreen was present in the midwinter festivals, especially in the Norse and Germanic tribes, and there was symbol of eternal life, continuity of nature, and immortality. The second one I already mentioned was the tree of life, or the axis mundi, the world tree, the Yggdrasil. The other one that I have not mentioned yet, but it's also very important to understanding the solstice and so this winter celebration, is Roman Saturnalias. Roman Saturnalias were held between 17th and 23rd of December, and they were basically festival honoring the Saturn. Saturn was a deity. Saturn also is a planet. And when we look from the planetary standpoint, he is the keeper of karma and time. So during Saturnalias, there was a tradition not to bring the Christmas trees or evergreens, but they would cut branches and decorate with the branches. Now, what is also interesting to note that there is an English word that calls the Christmas tree, not Christmas tree, but it's a fir. We have different firs. So Christmas trees actually are firs. And when you look at, again, the word fir, what does it resemble us? These are other words that fir resembles?
Fire.
Fire. Yes, the meaning was fire. And the evergreens, often celebration, often use of evergreens came together with the fire. So there would be a fire and there would be the evergreen put together, because what we're celebrating in the fir is the sun. Sun is the fire. So this is the soul and sister. We're celebrating the balance of the sun with the eternal evergreen and the fire. So the evergreen, the Christmas tree, was called a fir because it was so associated with the fire. Then the other tradition that used the firs and mistletoes and oaks was Druidic and Celtic practices. So they also celebrated Winter Solstice, and they also used the evergreens in the celebration. Now I'll go a little bit across the history of Christmas tree and how did we acquire it today. It has quite fascinating history. Actually, the first use of a Christmas tree in Christianity that was recorded was the first Christmas tree, so to say, was used by Saint Boniface in 8th century, where he have cut the fir tree and he declared it to be symbol of everlasting life in Christ. Sounds quite natural. The evergreen, everlasting life, attach Christ to it, remove sun from it, and we have the Christmas tree in Christianity. So the only thing that happened to the poor Christmas tree, the only bad thing that happened to the fire, was forgotten. We forgot about the sun. The sun was a representation of all gods. So we replaced sun with the Christ. So that was the Saint Boniface in 8th century. And that was the beginning of Christianization of the symbol. Now the next record that we see on Christmas tree actually coming from 15th century, and they're coming from Latvia and Estonia. This is the first records we see on tree being brought into the houses and decorated. And again, this is not surprising because Latvia and Estonia were the last countries in Europe to be Christianized. So the very last crusade was to the Baltics, to Christianize the Baltics. So by 15th century, they were really the most recent Christians in Europe, and the Christians most attached still to their pagan traditions because they did not want to be Christianized. They were Christianized by force, and they were still very attached to their pagan traditions. So for them, it was very natural to get the furs back from the forest and attach it to the Christmas, and they really used the references to the Christmas tree as everlasting life to merge the two beliefs, the pagan and the Christian. So by 16th century, there is a noted increase of use of Christmas trees in Germany. And it is in Germany when we see first decorations of the Christmas tree with apples, nuts, candles. And it is supposed to represent the tree of paradise from the Garden of Eden. And it was Martin Luther that introduced use of candles. So candles were introduced mostly in the Protestant churches and the Protestant movements to again represent the spiritual awakening, the return to the Christ, or as we say, return to our own inner light and the higher self. By 17th century, the tree was widely used in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And it is only by 18th, 19th century we see the Christmas tree coming to England and being used widely in England. And that happened actually, it's quite explainable. It was happened during the Queen Charlotte. And Queen Charlotte was actually of German descent. So she brought her Germanic tradition to England. So the beginning of the Christmas tree in England was brought by a ruler of a Germanic descent. And then it definitely got commercialized and became a big tradition during Queen Victoria. But again, if we return back from the Christianization of Christmas tree and later commercialization of Christmas tree, the inner esoteric meaning of it is that it's basically the sacred groves of firs and evergreens were to represent the cosmic axis, the axis mundi, connecting all levels of existence and all levels being in us. And the evergreen in the winter is definitely a representation of eternal life and an undying soul. The candles on the tree is awakening of our spiritual faculties. And the star on top is the aligning ourselves with the divine guidance, but not the external divine guidance. Aligning ourselves with our higher triad of Atmamana Buddhi, and realizing our own divine nature. So say it's the star of initiation. And the ornaments and gifts, again, the karmic blessings of our physical world, of our aspirations and hopes and wishes and achievements, or our spiritual evolution and spiritual achievements of what we're able to acquire in each individual life. Next, I would like to share a very beautiful fairy tale about a Christmas tree that also holds lots of symbology and lots of esoteric meaning. The fairy tale starts with the Christmas tree peacefully living, being young and growing and enjoying her life in the forest. And she's surrounded by many, many other Christmas trees. And in no way it perceives itself as the most beautiful or the most important. It just hopes that one day she may grow taller or maybe more bushy or more beautiful, but there it stands among the trees. And one dark day, a carriage comes, and people jump from the carriage, and there are children, and there are people, and there are axes, and they come to the tree and say, "This is the one." And the tree says, "Wow, I am the one. I always knew that I must be special. I'm the chosen one." And of course, the Christmas tree at that moment doesn't know what it's chosen for. So then the man comes with the big chainsaw and starts cutting the trunk. And the Christmas tree cries, "No, no, 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 I don't want to do that. That was not the intent. I don't want to be the chosen one. That hurts." But nobody cares, the Christmas tree. All of your cries are in vain. The man keeps cutting. The next thing, it falls. It feels lots of pain. It cannot stand anymore. Doesn't know what's happening. There's lots of confusion. The Christmas tree is dragged on the carriage, and it just sits there and hopes that somehow something's going to work out, because it's in lots of pain, lots of fear of what will come. A state that we all often experience when our trunk is cut from the reality that we know and enjoy. But the Christmas tree doesn't know it's a transformation. It's just leading her to a new reality, and neither do we. So the Christmas tree travels to the house on the carriage, and then it wonders what will happen next. And the most miraculous things happen. They carry her into the big room, put her in a bucket of water, and it feels nice and cool and fresh again. And everybody comes and looks at the Christmas tree. And Christmas tree starts thinking, maybe this is not so bad. I am indeed special. I have this nice water. I'm standing in this beautiful place, but what's important, everyone looks at me and everyone says, "Wow, aren't she beautiful?" And Christmas tree starts to perk up, like, okay, we transitions through some pain and distress, and now we have this beautiful house and everybody's looking at me. Then the night came, the people turned off the lights, went to sleep, and Christmas tree is just wondering what will happen the next day. And so do we sometimes, after feeling that we want some good karmic charm and luck. And the next day, even more beautiful things started happening. Incredibly nice things. The people came back, and they brought boxes and boxes, and they started taking beautiful, shiny objects out of these boxes and putting on the Christmas tree and decorating this Christmas tree. And the Christmas tree could not believe there is this ornament, and there is a little shiny ball, and there is a little rabbit, and all the kids were squealing and with joy and saying, "This is the best day ever." And of course, Christmas tree thought, because of her. Like, if it's not for her, that wouldn't be the best day ever. And she is so beautiful, and she deserves all of these ornaments. And isn't that how we sometimes feel when we get some titles, appointments, roles that are just ornaments, but we perceive that they're all about us, and they make us very beautiful and special. So the Christmas tree got all decorated. And then even more fun started happening. People were coming every day to the room with the Christmas tree and dancing there and singing and eating and telling stories. And they would always look with admiration at the Christmas tree. She was the best. And without her, none of this would happen. She was actually the center of everything. And the ego of the Christmas tree was inflating bigger and bigger and bigger. Of course, Christmas tree didn't know that this is black swan effect. It's just the season. So one day, there was a shocking revision of belief. The Christmas tree woke up as usual, was expecting people to come and start celebrating her and putting more glitter and singing more songs. But nobody came in. It was quiet and dark in the room. And kids were not jumping, and people were not rushing to the room. It was total silence. So it stood, and I said, okay, maybe it's tomorrow. And then tomorrow came, and a woman of the house walked by and took something from the room, walked away, and nothing ever happened. Nobody came to celebrate her anymore. And I started feeling a little bit anxious. Like, well, did I lose my glitter? Did I lose my charm? Why no one celebrates me anymore? And then one day, again, people came to the room, and she said, okay, now it's going to get all better. I'll get more water. I'll get more toys. People will be praising me. But something absolutely horrible happened. A man grabbed her by the trunk out of the bucket of water, went outside, shook her really hard, and then dragged her to the attic and threw her there. And she said, what did I do to deserve this? Well, I was the most beautiful. I was everything in this house. And now somebody came, shook me to the point that my brain shook, and just carelessly threw me in the attic. I didn't do anything, but this was horrible. And the Christmas tree started hoping and praying to the god of the forest to be rescued from this horrible place, because it didn't see what's happening. It didn't know that she's going through the cycles, that the celebration is over. This is a new cycle. And the tree felt abandoned and not loved, and everything was very sad and dark. And it was the month of January. And it saw it's probably going to die in that attic and just dry out without water, and that will be the end of it. And then tree was thinking, what was the meaning of all of this? I was growing, I was born in the forest. I was cut. I was brought here to enjoy all of this beauty and be the center of celebration. And I gave so much joy to everyone. And then just to be thrown and not be cared and die in this dark attic. And then one day, there was again some noise, and a man came in, and again grabbed her by the trunk and took her downstairs to the living room. And she thought, oh, maybe he'll put me back in the bucket. But instead, he took the chainsaw and started cutting the Christmas tree in pieces. And she was crying, oh no, that hurts, not me. Why are you chopping me into pieces? I am no longer the Christmas tree. I have one piece here, one piece there. So symbology of the Osiris. And then the man collected all the pieces and he threw it in the fireplace and set it on fire. So the fur was on fire. And the man and the woman sat by the fire and warmed their hands and thought, wow, this is a beautiful fire. And in that moment, the fur realized that that's what she came here for, to burn and give warmth to the others. It was not to collect ornaments. It was not to be celebrated. And the abandonment was not real. It came here to burn, to be the fur fire, and to give warmth to these two old people who would probably die without this warmth. And it burned in joy and in glory. And that's the end of the story. So I'll finish the talk at this. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. For the Christmas tree.
I didn't get the moral of the story in the end. I followed through this. The tree wasn't originally expecting to be treated as beautiful and was treated as beautiful, and the owner broke it down at the end. But beyond that, I still somehow don't get.
Okay. Here it comes. Sometimes we come here to think that we're here to be celebrated and loved and venerated and decorated with titles and appreciation. But the Christmas tree realizes that it is most happy when it is burning and producing heat, when it's doing something for the others. So we realized that all these decorations and all the celebrations actually did not have meaning, that it is most happy when it is set on fire and it can produce something that makes the life of others better. So that was the story, why she's so happy to be burning.
So maybe it symbolizes self-sacrifice?
Yes, it's about self-sacrifice, and then because it cannot find meaning, like why there was bad things, why there were all those karmic permutations. There were good things happening, there were bad things happening, but it doesn't make sense. When actually the only sense is in realizing that there is no Christmas tree, there is no ornaments, there's no separation. If you can make your life meaningful for the benefit of others, that's what basically every esoteric and exoteric religion teaches. That's the meaning in the symbol of Christmas. And in a symbol of Christmas, I mean in the symbol of being born as gods. It's losing our individual self, and this is what we heard in the voice of silence. This is basically if you can abandon all self, all self-thought, and be all thought, and work for the benefit of all, then you can realize your fullest potential. So it is almost like when we say that God is Christ or God is Buddha or God is this and that, we limit God to the smallest way we understand that God, when God has no limit. And when we so attached to our self-identity that I am this, I need this ornaments to decorate myself, to put these identities on me, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, and I'm all shiny and people love me, we're not able to reach the capacity that we can of being omnipresent, being all. And the only way we can reach that capacity by sacrificing us in a small ourselves, our ego, in a small or big level for the others, not because sacrifice is good or moral or takes us anywhere on spiritual evolution, because it is the only way to be bigger than limitation of self. So that's the only way to experience ourselves as God, through sacrifice, because as long as we attach to little me of who I am, with all of my own personal ornaments, we're not able to experience more. We're limited in that little image of ourselves. So that's why sacrifice is at the core of so many beliefs. And in this little Christmas tree fairy tale, this Christmas tree story, the Christmas tree realizes that neither her birth, neither her ornaments, neither all of the veneration of her mattered. What mattered is her sacrifice for these two old people. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
This is what we're here to understand more than with our mind. It's not easy.
It was an unexpectedly sad story. I didn't expect to be taken through so many emotions during this talk this morning. I wanted to jump back to the idea of the sun as a symbol, and just reflect on the fact that our sun, like the sun for the Earth or for this solar system, is really one of, billions or trillions of suns. We don't really know how many, but there's a lot of them. How does that? Is there anything to the symbolism that we can take from that? I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Well, the sun, from the beginning of time, the sun is what basically kept us going as a physical humanity here. Like without the sun, none of us would be here. The life wouldn't be possible. So the symbolism of the sun as the eternal light, or as this sort of the fire, was attached to the celestial body that basically keeps us alive. But it can be viewed as a physical survival, like without the sun. The people knew when the sun dies, the nature dies, there's no food. But also this was transformed to symbolize the spiritual life or death. So sun became so, it basically, if we look at each one of us, and experience when we don't have sun or we don't have fire, there is an anxiety, even on some kind of a subliminal level. Like when you sit by the fire, your whole body relaxes. We are tuned into surviving, and fire and sun would be something that we understood as humanity we cannot live without. So this applied to the spiritual realms, basically to symbolize the same, as above, so below. If anyone has any thoughts on that, please welcome also to jump in. No more thoughts. Okay.
It's so clear. I'm like, I have no questions on that. I enjoyed and appreciated your take in connecting of external symbol versus internal realization and empowerment. The image that came to mind was of watching some sort of a medieval film where the man is like, I'm not worthy and I'm a sinner, but please, accept me into your kingdom. And just that at one moment in time, half of humanity was living like that, in that state of mind, in that state of complete and utter lack of empowerment and mercy. But at the same time, part of me also wonders is if through industrialization, through our kind of being able to have the luxury of stepping away from these all affecting cycles, if we begun to feel more powerful and it changed our relationship with the idea of God, that no longer am I a poor sinner, I have real capacity and power to change my world and my environment, versus pre-industrialization, if it snowed an extra foot, you all may starve.
This is beautiful, but I think this is a black swan affair.
No.
We may feel very powerful over universal cycles, but when you look at the big picture,
Of course.
one meteorite.
Of course, in the big picture.
In the big picture, the more we can align ourselves with those natural forces and understand how to ride the wave and not to say that we're in control of the wave. We naturally would like to be in control of the wave, but are we ever? I don't know.
Well, I mean, looking at pre-industrial society or medieval society, even as far back as you can go, things get worse in terms of freedom of thought, in terms of quality of life. As we have progressed, although of course there are still many, many problems, and organized religion is still very organized, the ability to think independently, express our thoughts, to rely on science, and I mean that in the best way, the science of the philosophy of Theosophy even, it's quite advanced relative to even 100 years ago, let alone 1,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago. Just to the other student's point, I think we have achieved a lot and are continuing to evolve our ability to think critically and think freely relative to the past, I guess.
Yeah, very true on that. Sometimes I like to say we really as a humanity on a path of intellectual evolution to abandon fundamentalist thinking. Because whether it is a religion or it's a scientific method, we can be attached to science in a fundamentalist way as well, and we often are. If we cannot touch and prove and test now, it does not exist. It does. We just don't have the tools and instruments yet to understand it. So, but the rejection of everything that we cannot touch, taste, and prove is just another religious fundamentalist thinking, but applied to science. So it's really how can we allow inquiry at all levels, at scientific inquiry, religious inquiry. That's the real evolution of accepting the other, accepting that maybe there is no duality, or duality is not as defined as we make it appear. And we had a talk on this, on basically how religion and science are not really that far apart if you stop looking at it in dualistic terms.
I had a question about, you talked about it's the point of balance, the solstice. I mean, it seems like it's a never-ending struggle to get to a balance point. And yet it does come around twice a year, at least, in terms of like the balance of light and dark. So it seems there are natural balance points, and we do encounter them. I'm not sure we understand them well enough to make the most of them, but I don't know, just thinking about cycles and that it's not that balance points never come, they do come regularly. I guess it's up to us to like work along with the cycle better to take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's exactly that, and that's the challenge with our post-industrial now. The information world, like industrialism is already past. Now we are in the age of technology and information, where the information is coming at all the time, and finding the point of balance and being aligned with natural cycles becoming even less and less probable. But
yeah, as soon as we like think we're getting a grip on the way things are, it changes. Like, no one's exactly sure how AI is gonna sweep the world, but there's positive visions of it, negative visions of it, but the reality will probably be somewhere in the middle, hopefully.
in a way, like if there would be any wish that the student could make on the winter solstice, is being more on that catching the balance. It's almost like surfing.
Yeah.
Like how many times in a year you can be constantly falling off the surfboard, getting yourself up, falling, getting yourself up. It's exhausting. Like how can we learn to be at the point of balance and just surf this wave of life? It would be so much easier, but we don't allow ourselves to listen to the cycles and align ourselves to this point. So this was a very profound question. Like there are those balance points. They are there in nature. They are there in the cycle of the planets. We just need to catch them. I think it's probably a wish for many of us.
Yeah, maybe we see them in hindsight, hindsight's 2020, and you can look back and say, oh, that was fairly balanced, but we rarely realize it at the time.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that balance is also, this is why there is this practice of basically that we also adhere to meditation. It's not to empty everything, it's to reach some balance point in ourselves, because only from that balance point we can, it's point of focus, it's point of collecting ourselves instead of being everywhere all at the same time and nowhere at all. So that's why it's so important, because maybe it's one of the techniques to bring us to understand what balance is.
Yeah, the middle way. It's so easy to go to extremes. It's very difficult to achieve that perfect balance. And I think that's why, like in art, visual arts or dance or music, it's that perfect balance is what strikes us with awe and beauty. A sense of grandeur is to see it, to hear it, to feel it.
Yeah, and in a way, the balance is also, I think, deeply connected to a rhythm. But you can get in a rhythm from not point of balance. And rhythm is in everything. And rhythm is the cycle. From music to basically cycles of the nature, it's the rhythm. So being in the balance and following the rhythm of life instead of always being, so to say, off beat. But there's something that I wanted to share. It was actually fascinating. I was reading, I don't remember which book was it, one of the books, I think it was in one of the Crosby books. And there was one sentence that piqued my attention. He was writing, and it is understandable that it is very, very hard to focus on anything or have a minute of a free time at the end of the 19th century. And I was thinking, imagine beginning of 21st.
Yeah.
Even then, the speed seemed unbearable to people. But now looking from 21st, it's like you were just relaxing there. Then it piqued my attention, like, huh, so that's how people felt.
Yeah, it's all relative.
Yeah, they felt overwhelmed. They felt like it's very, very hard to focus on anything at the end of this 19th century.
I
And
think
yet oh, sorry, go ahead, Cyrus.
go ahead, Josh.
No, go ahead, please. I've already spoken.
Just a comment that Mr. Judge had said that modern times are basically a dense forest of existence, and it's really hard to not to be drawn in different directions, pull apart in different directions. But those are words that Mr. Judge used as well. So
Interesting.
sorry, Josh. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to make a comment about our capacity for this complexity seems to have increased. Like we're able to navigate this dense forest with the same kind of speed, if not faster, than we were in the past. And I wonder, I mean, if you look at the human brain, it hasn't changed. Our DNA really hasn't changed in tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years. And yet we do seem to be, we teach algebra to elementary school kids now, right? We never used to do that. It used to be the basic reading, writing, arithmetic, right? I was watching a science fiction story, and in the characters in the story, because they basically live in space and they're moving spaceships around all the time and they're having to enter atmosphere, they just do sort of the calculations for orbital mechanics, just like how ships and gravity interact with celestial bodies and things like this. They just do it sort of casually because it's just they need to. We don't do that, but maybe in 500 years where this takes place, they will have to, we will be able to do that. We seem to have this capacity to absorb more and more complexity, and yet our brain is not changing too much. So what is? It's just a rhetorical question. I don't really have an answer for it or expect an answer per se, but I find it fascinating that there's something evolving there.
And I think this capacity even changed within each of our lifetimes. So those of us who live a little bit longer. I remember at sort of 30 years or like 40 years ago, I don't think it was even imaginable to perceive so much information moving at the same time and manage so many parallel things.
What this student would offer is that the only thing that has changed is our belief in what is possible. There's a very interesting anecdote about, and I don't know the names of the runners or the year, but the point is, I'm gonna make up numbers for the sake of the story, that for 100 years, no one was able to run faster than 15 miles per hour. I don't know, maybe that's super fast, but say 10 miles per hour. No one was able to run faster. No one ever broke the record. And then 1 year in 1930, one man hits 10 miles per hour. And suddenly, in the year that follows, 6 others do as well. But for 100 years, no one could do it. When one person showed that it was possible, it's a leap in consciousness. I have a saying that I love that says, there's only one thing faster than the speed of light, and that's the speed of thought. That our thoughts can expand what is possible for us faster than light itself can move. So anyways, that's a side tangent. But the point is belief. Like what you believe is possible is generally speaking possible. But oftentimes we don't believe it till we've seen it. And then humanity gets to take these larger steps to the next thing. Like for example, with landing rockets vertically. No one landed a rocket vertically for 100 years, and now within 10 years of the first one, Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' company, has also just landed within the last 2 months their first vertical rocket. So it was a matter of perception and thought more than it was a matter of our physical or tangible ability.
Amen. That brings us to the very core message of this talk. We are God. And the moment we believe this, we can absorb any information, the entire Akashic record, everything.
Yeah, you mentioned that John said we can do better, essentially more than
Yeah.
Christ, and that reminded me. There's a section in the Voice of the Silence where once the aspirant has sort of, about to cross to the other shore, it says the living power made free in him, that power which is himself, can raise the tabernacle of illusion high above the gods, above great Brahm and Indra. Now he shall surely reach his reward. Great reward, great reward. Seemed apropos to the whole
Yeah.
John quote. So if there aren't any further thoughts or comments, we can end it here. Thank you so much for an engaging talk at this time of year, and wish everybody very happy holidays, and see you next week. We'll continue with study class and studies in the secret doctrine.
Are we having reading today?
Yes, we'll take a break for a few minutes and meet back to take up The Way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva.
So in 10 minutes, perfect.
Yes. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.
Happy